Hey. It's on the screen okay? Cool. Hi everyone, good afternoon and welcome to, it's my presentation about linking drones. It's more of a story than a detailed technical presentation in any way. So a little bit about our company, where we've come from and what we've done and how we've done that, how we've connected that with ArduPilot. So you see in the picture, we have our vertical takeoff, tail sit. Are we good? Yeah, is that working better? People can hear me without me. Well, the mic's here. Is that right? I'll stand back or stand forward or sideways. I don't know. Yeah, so this less technical detail and more of a story I'll take you through today. Before diving in, I'll just show you the main people in the team. You'll see me there on the right as the software guy. Tess, our CEO, and Alberto, our CTO, are both, and Andres are all Spanish. So the company is based in Spain. I'm the only one here in the UK. And throughout, we got lots of different experience between us. In particular, Alberto, very technically adept and has worked on sort of drone designs for other companies in the past. And if I just a little bit of a look at our sort of origin story, if you like. Let me just rearrange that. So back in 2020, really, when Alberto had this idea for this sort of shape of drone and looking at having, I kind of describe to people who don't know drones as sort of a briefcase on rotors kind of thing. So the idea where your payload chassis is your wing shape. So you're taking off with that and flying using that in sort of fixed wing mode. So your wing is your payload, and then having the rotors at the bottom for vertical takeoff as a tail sitter and vertical and landing, and with no other control surfaces. That was his idea, and he knocked together some of these drawings in sort of 2021 as to sort of look at the idea and understand and see what felt right, I guess, initially from what looked like it might work and things like that. In 2022, the team was set up to start working on it. At this time, I wasn't part of that. I was involved, and as Tessa Alberto and with another guy helping out with some of the software aspects to begin with. But initially, the real focus was on building a drone. Can we fly it? Does it work? And the company was created later in 2022, the Linking Drones, the company. So I guess the two first questions that we were trying to answer there were, will it work, this idea of the drone with controlling it with just the four rotors, no control surfaces, with the weight distributions that goes with something that's that shape and filled with stuff? And who will buy it? Is there a real market there for a delivery drone like this with that sort of payload space around 5 litres, 1 kilogram, sort of the target? So we sort of started off thinking that maybe the consumer market could be good. It's a good toy. It's like people might use it to fly things around villages or to their family members or something like that. And that was sort of an idea of connecting people. That was sort of the sort of one of the early sort of taglines of the company, was connecting people and looking at what we could do with the drone from that point of view. As time went on, we lent more towards the business direction when we look at like some of the things around the cost and the need, and also if you get it into businesses first, it's easier to deal with because people may be more professional, more understanding what a drone is and how to use it, and support is easier and things like that. So we focus more in a business direction after sort of investigating what was possible in the different market spaces. Yeah, that's so that's what we have there. Is that video going to play? I need to press play. This is a sort of a, I don't know exactly when it was, but there's a video showing sort of the first version that was knocked together. It's not nothing automatic, just flown with a remote control. So, and I think the rotors aren't spaced completely well for some of the movements, or certainly for some of the fixed wing motions, but just to prove that the general concept worked as a thing that can fly. So it has RD Pilot, but with a direct RC control and limited sensors, so the GPS isn't important if you're just doing it with a remote control. So that was our first sort of way of looking at what would it work, answering that question. Is it going to the next slide? So just to look at what is there in the drone. Obviously the 4 propellers with the asymmetric layout to help with all the control motions. The wing shape, that's something we've got a pattern there for, as the sort of idea that it's the flying wing sort of design with the rotors. So the RD Pilot, and obviously the configurations for a VTOL tail sitter and a lot of the settings that go with that. Lots of things in Q options that do different things, and no control surfaces. So I think the thing we found with RD Pilot really was, I mean, when you look at sort of the slightly odd shape, I don't see many drones that have this sort of layout in terms of their shape. The fact that with the parameters that are available in RD Pilot, that you can fly and control it, I think it's pretty cool. I think it shows the wide flexibility that RD Pilot can do just from sort of one code base and one sort of firmware set. We use Bluetooth communication with a mobile phone. It's the aim is that the users control it in a simplified way through a mobile phone, with basically setting on a map where they want to go, and it runs auto missions from that. So that being the primary connection, and we also have a remote control and radio controller backup, largely for regulation, safety, avoiding loss, and things like that. But the idea is that most people would use it with the Bluetooth from the phone. When we started, we had I think it was, I can't mean 535 because that's in the future, but 435, I guess, and now we're using 452. I think one of the really useful updates we had between those two was something, there was something about the pitch control I term. I mean, someone probably knows it because someone here probably coded it, but it was, we found that in between those versions was really, really useful for getting the control really, really improved. So I mentioned before that our aim of control for end users is from the mobile app. So if I can put the mouse wherever it's supposed to go. It doesn't show on my screen. Yes, the idea is you effectively pick, it sort of takes you through the steps of getting to flight. So the first thing is to pick your location, and you can set waypoints as you go. So, I mean, pretty similar to, I guess, the way Mission Planner or other programs would do it, but sort of just with them trying to be as easy to use as possible on a mobile phone. And then when you go to start the flight, at the end of that, you're sort of taken through pre-flight checks and steps you need to do, and weather checks and things like that, to try and make it as sort of intuitive as possible for users who are not as technically savvy. Obviously, with regulations as they are, then it's often the case, especially in Europe and places like that, where you would need a competent person with a flyer ID and a radio to be there. There are other places in the world that I'll mention later where that's less important, because the usefulness of the drone and what it can do means that the requirements can be less stringent. As a side note, on having worked on the app, and having obviously used Mission Planner when we're doing our own testing, has made me think about whether there's scope in the future or usefulness in the future for having kind of a Mission Planner for phones. I know there is a version that works, but it's kind of the Windows version on a tablet screen, and whether having like a really mobile or tablet optimized set of screens could be useful. I don't know, maybe it exists in some sense, but it's just as a thought I had from doing this, and part of what I've done here is shown that you can connect USB and UDP to the app as well, even though the primary focus is Bluetooth. But that's more of a side thought I had while working on it. I need to come back over here. So this is the flashier video showing the sort of the end product and its sort of use. So it's a bit more advertisey, but you sort of get the impression of what it can do. When you see the sort of the way the payload can be fitted with the net to keep things stable, entering the GPS coordinates or selecting location, and then the takeoff vertical, and then the sort of the transition into the horizontal as it flies off. So it can get, the idea obviously is that you get the best of both worlds, being able to land in sort of tighter spaces of the vertical whilst having the speed you get from going fixed wing for the main duration of the flight. And we got our coffee at the end. So on the next screen, no, there we go. Yeah, just a bit on the way, what we've got there and the way things connect up, just to give you an idea. I've sort of described it as we went already, but obviously we've got the autopilot controller with running RD Pilot connected to sensors and the servo controls, as you'd expect, to drive motors. And then on board inside the drone, we've got a sort of a mini small onboard computer which has the Bluetooth connectivity. So you've got a Mavlink connection in there, so the commands for setting up the missions are sent from that. And then we use like Bluetooth low energy attributes from the phone to do that. I did think about having that being more Mavlinky, but I've opted for a more bespoke protocol, just because it means you can optimize the messages a bit more. You're not reliant on some of the Mavlink messages are designed for lots of conversation, like please send me this, here it is, kind of thing. Whereas with this, you can send a whole flight plan in one message instead of waypoint by waypoint. And then the onboard computer can deal with the protocol on the other side. And then obviously you've got the receiver to the radio controller. We're also recently been looking into, I think on the radio controller can set up itself with a Wi-Fi hotspot that can route Mavlink out as a UDP output. So the idea that the phone could also have a telemetry screen, so you can, once you've sent your flight, you can track where it is via that we've been looking at, but that's not in the release version of the app at the moment, but that's the idea. Yeah, we did have a few. I think the way that we've set this up with the phone being a commander, if you like, has given us a few things we had to think about in terms of working with it. So you've got a radio and the phone, the radio and the onboard computer really, and that potentially either at any point could arm or disarm if commanded to. So just making sure that we don't do anything silly like the one thing arms it and then the next second the other thing disarms it, or vice versa, and things like that, so that we know where we are. I mentioned already about getting the balance right between the Bluetooth messages and the Mavlink messages, so that you've got the phone's got the right data. I think I would potentially do it differently if I was doing it now, but the way we've got it, trying to get getting those messages and mapping between them, and terrain data as well. Like if you send an auto mission, so the way on our app we allow you to set a kind of a multi-leg flight, but then you might only send one of the flight legs at a time to the drone, which means it will only ask for terrain for the bits it's seen, which might mean that later you're going somewhere where you don't have terrain. So we have to do so I was thinking about ways to make sure that all the terrain data that you might need for all the legs of your flight plan are loaded. So there's a few little mini headaches that we had to work through to get the architecture to work in the way that we sort of envisaged the customers using it. One of the fun things we got to do is we got invited to the Philippines. I mentioned about places who were willing to look at using the drone in situations that might, or certainly wouldn't be acceptable in some parts of the world, in terms of remote medical delivery, where the importance of getting something somewhere is more important than perhaps the specifics of BV loss or how far you go and things like that. So they were willing to, like with some local government approvals, do some testing of flying over sort of unpopulated, low populated areas, round hills and things like that, to get things into remote villages. So it's pretty cool to go there, pretty cool to see, but they and the gods of demo, who Andrew mentioned this morning, did try to jeopardize us a little bit. We had my laptop, before I even got to Manila, my laptop completely black screen failed and wouldn't turn on again. I managed to get a spare. The van broke down while we were doing 12 hours across the island in the Philippines to get to the randomly remote place that they insisted was the right place to be doing the demo. We, at one point, had to wade through a mangrove to find some bits that we dropped somewhere. And I know you'll tell me this is impossible, but Mavlink signature got set on our autopilot, which meant I couldn't get in to change a parameter, however much I tried. And then ants infested both my broken laptop and my spare laptop. That was in Indonesia, not Philippines, but it's all part of what the gods of demo can do when you're traveling to places you're not used to. I think some of those stories can have more detail in the bar, but probably not now. I mean, having been 2 years myself working in this company, there's definitely been a lot of learning, personal learning. I used to work in Airbus, so I knew big planes and landing gear systems in Bristol, in the UK here. And now I was learning a lot about drones, about RD Pilot and what Mavlink meant. I mean, I think when I started, people threw terms at me I didn't understand, but I've learned a lot about those. Also, the way startups work, sort of, there's no such thing as not my job. If there's only 3 of you in the company, it's all hands to the pumps a lot of the time in startups. There's been, great fun and a lot to learn. And even doing mobile apps, I'd done a lot of software for 20 odd years, but mobile apps I'd never touched before, and sort of the back-end systems behind that. So it's been pretty cool to learn, and it continues. that's sort of my closing thoughts on what I've learned, I guess, in the last few years. But happy to take any questions or not, as people want. I see a few. You wait for mics to be run to you. I think you're right, Andrew.
Yeah, fantastic talk. Thank you. A couple of sort of things that come to mind. One is the regulatory side of sort of people being, obviously different in each country, how you're dealing with people without, SORA permissions doing BVLOS flights. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is it looked like your communication meant that while the drone was in transit, it wouldn't have a communications link to anyone, because I didn't see any BVLOS or longer range communication link. Is that correct, or is there a missing piece there?
So what we were doing when we were in the Philippines is we would have a radio control at the person sending the drone and another radio at the person receiving. And when it goes out of sight of one, it will come into sight of the other. But it is possible in the setup that you can send it out of range of both, and then it comes into range, and that's possible in the way it is at the moment. But if your regulation doesn't allow it, you shouldn't do it. So
but longer term for your customers.
Longer term, yeah, the LTE stuff is definitely. I was talking with Ed at lunchtime, and yes, having the sort of the 4G, the LTE connection. I was saying I bought something off of AliExpress to try and start working on that a year ago, and it never arrived. So I probably should loop back round and go back to that.
I can give you one.
It's one of these startup issues where your list of things you need to do and the list of things you've done sort of you don't catch up. So, but that's definitely something I think that's critical for kind of our next development.
I can give you a modem later. You good?
I got one here if you want the mic. Run.
Any issues with center of gravity because of where you put the load and how you move the load around?
So obviously, yeah, the center of gravity does get changed. What we've got is we put the battery right at the top to try and get the weight, and then the control-y stuff is at the bottom. So then obviously the rotors are at the bottom. So that tries to give it a sort of push it a bit more to the nose. But yeah, once you put stuff in, it does change it. What we've found so far is it doesn't seem to change it in a way that messes with the control, but it is sort of in our list of things to do to try and look at whether different amounts of stuff you put in, different ways of laying it out, means that certain things should be tuned differently, or we're even looking at whether we can, while you're in the vertical takeoff flight, whether you can detect certain things about the weight and then even abort a flight if your rotors end up going too fast. But yeah, it does make a difference, but it doesn't, because of having the battery at the front and the rotors at the back, it's sort of, and the middle bit is the bit people play with. It's less of a problem than we probably feared it would be.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for a great talk. It's very cool to see. I was wondering about the how much load it takes and what your takeoff mass is.
So I think it's on the other screen. Do I? No, I don't. But so the drone, the thing is 1.8 kilos empty with a battery, sorry. And then we declare a maximum of 1 kilo payload, which if it's 1 kilo, you have to be a bit, you can't obviously fly as far. It's sort of, and depending on the motors get pretty hot, especially in the landings. We land pretty slowly to make sure that we can see the ground, we're not bumping and things like that. But yeah, that's what we've declared and what we've tested at. But yeah, it has to be not too long a flight. There's a limit on how far you can go. I think in our user guide we declare some limits for, like, if you're going to put this weight, then you should only go 5k or maximum or 2k maximum or whatever. I can't remember the numbers, but yeah.